Okay, today we're going to take this chassis apart and check it for straightness. We start with a nice flat block with a groove in it. And we take the car and pull the braid out. And then we pull the clips off of the guide. Alright, now we've got the front end free. Now, the bite bar, you want to stick your fingernail right there and push the bite bar towards the other side of the chassis, and then tip this pen until the bite bar starts sticking out. Grab the bite bar and pull it out. Now, I'm going to wiggle the chassis, and we're going to get the pans out of the horns here. One side and then the other. Sometimes this is easy, sometimes it's difficult. And then we've now separated the two halves of the chassis. First we'll put this side down, and we'll go ahead and take the wheels axle out of the back of the car so they're not in our way. Get the gear loose, and the tire screw should be aligned with the gear screw, so that should be easy to find, and off they come. Be careful in case there's any washers. And there happen to be two washers on this side, so we'll just pull this out. Okay, set the chassis down flat on the block and turn it up so you can see that we don't seem to have any arch going on here, and the back end is not arched up, raised up. This is a nice flat center section. And we go ahead and take a look at the nose and see that the wings are also, and you can tell by holding the chassis down and then tapping other parts. If you can hear them tap, then you know they're sticking up a little bit. You might have to do a little bit of bending. This chassis is just fine. So we'll put this center section aside and take a look at the pans. Now once again, you turn it up on end. You look all the way from the back of the chassis to the front of the chassis. Oftentimes they'll be bent up. It'll be raised up right here under my finger here. And then you check the horn to see that it's maybe slightly bent upward. That's where we like to have it. Turn it over, do the other side. Son of a gun, on this chassis has not seen any wall shots since the last time I straightened it. Neat. Alright, now we turn it up on end and we look to see that these horns, if we can get into focus here. Focus on my finger. No? Doesn't want to focus on my finger. There we go. See if there's any tilt in these horns here and here. Looking pretty good. Now finally turn it over and look at the back side, and we see that there may be a slight lift here and a slight lift here. Otherwise you would want these tips to touch here on the outside and maybe ever so slightly high towards the middle, or perfectly flat, and this one appears to be perfectly flat. Again, this chassis has not seen any wall shots, so let's go ahead and put it back together. Okay, take the two pieces and put the center section over the, or put the pans over the center section like that, and then start working on the front. Pull the lead wires through and slide it back so the lead wires are on top, and we inch these horns in here, one side and then the other. And all the while, the back end of the pans have been hanging down. Now we've got the front horns in place. The back end is ready to go in place. Put the chassis down, and here at this point, we want to go ahead and check to have the proper side play. What you do is to move the center section all the way to one side, so it's touching one pan. And we see that when it's touching there, it's also touching there. If you have anything less, then you don't get full possible movement. Now it's best to have full possible movement, then that way the chassis can move it, the maximum possible. And if you do need to tighten it up to make the car handle a little tighter, then you can start adding tape to restrict the movement. But you need the maximum movement to start with. Moving on, we now look for the bite bar. Now, oftentimes the center of this bite bar is all covered with gunk and rust and who knows what because of the acid that you've used to solder the motor in and out. So we'll go ahead and use some superfine sandpaper or crocus cloth in this case to go ahead and clean it up here. There we go. Now we also, if you have another flat surface, you can use that, but we're going to use this one. You want to roll this bite bar and see that it's straight, that it's not kinked anywhere. You don't have any gentle bends or whatever. This is really close. This is really close. We're going to go with this for time's sake. Otherwise, we might play with it a little more and trying to make it straighter. Oftentimes, we use an 047 bite bar, even though the original is a 50. Now, when you use an 047 bite bar, you have to add pads here and here. They're generally made out of body armor, and it looks like this one has lost its sticky. So we're going to go ahead and replace it in a minute, and that requires cleaning up the chassis, so on and so forth. But for time's sake, we're going to go ahead and finish the assembly of the chassis so you can see how it's done. It's not exactly opposite of how we got the bite bar out. I start over here on the gear side of the car, and actually it doesn't matter which side. You start on one side and push the bite bar through the holes until it's getting fairly close to the distance of the other hole, and then you slide the bite bar up and over this little guy here, and into place here. Notice I put my finger in the way to keep it from pushing the body armor out of the way, and you push it through both of the holes. You keep pushing until snap, it's in place, and we're done. Now all we have to do is to put the clips back on, put the braid back in. We're ready to go. That's it. We're done.